these remarkable people stepped in, the Hammond brothers.
Because a lot of films don't get made. I have a friend who made a very comfortable living for a while writing film scripts for films that never got made, but they liked what he did. They kept on hiring him. They just didn't make those movies.
I have a friend that does that too.
And my great thanks to both of you for being on our show. A reminder that if you want information about the 92nd Street Y and the film and everything else, go to our show page at wnyc.org. I've been speaking with Patricia Clarkson, Sir Ben Kingsley. The movie Learning to Drive opens this Friday at the Lincoln Square and the Angelica Film Center. It's been such a pleasure.
Great pleasure.
Thank you so much.
WNYC receives support from LV Wood, manufacturers of bespoke wood flooring. Bespoke wood floors are made to order and are all made in the USA. The New York showroom at 24 West 20th Street is open to the public. More at lvwood.com.
You can't handle the truth. Can the U.S. Marine Corps handle what it means to truly integrate men and women in combat?
I was told I was too aggressive, I was too blunt, I was too direct. My counterparts would not be told those things.
One woman's story of getting tough and losing her command. Next time on The Takeaway this afternoon at 3 on 93.9 FM WNYC.
On tomorrow's show, we will explore the ways that climate change threatens America's economy. Plus, New York Times Magazine's chief political correspondent, Jim Rutenberg, discusses the 50-year campaign to roll back the Voting Rights Act. That's what's coming up tomorrow on the Planet Bill Page Show.
This is WNYC, FM, HD, and AM, New York. Just keep listening.
In the second hour of today's show, Adam Resnick, an Emmy Award-winning writer for NBC's Late Night with David Letterman and many other shows, explains why he has spent much of his life trying to avoid interacting with other people. We will also find out what animal trainers can teach us about the power of positive reinforcement and how that can apply to humans. This is WNYC, WNYC.org. We're also available as a podcast. The news is next.
From NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. No one is yet claiming responsibility for a bombing in the heart of Thailand's capital, Bangkok, today, but the destruction is widespread and the death toll is climbing. 16 people now confirmed dead, scores more people wounded in what authorities say was an attack on the nation's tourism and economy. The explosion ripped through a shrine at a major intersection. The BBC's Jonathan Head filed this report shortly after the blast.
There's blood everywhere. It's an appalling scene. Looking, there's a crater and the smell of smoke and burning, and just these everywhere, these around us, these bodies and injured people. It's a dreadful, dreadful scene, and nobody really can understand what it is or why it's happened. It's completely unexpected. This is a very, very popular shrine. The people around the shrine were hit by the full force of the blast.
The BBC's Jonathan Head reporting. The death toll is also rising from another explosion in Tianjin, China. 114 people are known to have lost their lives in a chain of blasts from a warehouse that stored a volatile mix of chemicals last week. Dozens are still missing. Many of the victims were firefighters whose relatives staged protests for a third day demanding answers from government officials. NPR's Frank Langford says many residents are also demanding payment for damage.
About 200 protesters gathered outside a press conference in the port city of Tianjin to demand compensation. Homeowners said they had no idea the warehouse that blew up was handling flammable chemicals. Indeed, the warehouse appears to have violated Chinese law by handling such chemicals too close to public buildings. Among those chemicals, 700 tons of sodium cyanide, which is highly poisonous. The company was only authorized to handle 10 tons, according to Chinese state media. People's Daily, the Communist Party newspaper, said there were discrepancies between what the warehouse said it had stored and customs records, and that the company was suspected of smuggling. The nation's top prosecutor is investigating the disaster. Frank Langford, NPR News, Shanghai.
The White House is launching an initiative to take on this nation's heroin epidemic. NPR's Tamara Keith reports on a shift in emphasis.
More people in America die from drug overdoses than car accidents. Prescription opioids and heroin are driving the surge in drug deaths. The White House Drug Policy Office's new heroin response strategy treats it as a public health problem as well as a safety problem. A network of law enforcement and public health officers will issue alerts about dangerous batches of heroin and other threats, allowing health workers to distribute the overdose reversal drug naloxone to affected areas with the hope of reducing deaths. The initiative will also emphasize prevention and increasing access to treatment. The announcement also includes $5 million in new funding aimed at reducing the trafficking, distribution, and use of heroin. Tamara Keith, NPR News, Washington.
The Dow is up 66 points at 17,544. This is NPR News.
This is WNYC in New York. I'm Richard Hake. We're in the middle of a heat wave. It's 93 degrees right now, and temperatures top 90 for the third straight day in Central Park. The humidity will be a bit more oppressive today as well, making it feel closer to 100. There's an air quality alert in effect. Stay air conditioned and avoid strenuous outdoor activity, especially children, the elderly, and anyone with respiratory problems such as asthma and heart disease. Franchise owners have filed formal objections to the governor's plan to raise the minimum wage of fast food workers to $15 an hour, a prelude to a possible lawsuit. The increase was endorsed by a state wage board last month and will begin to be phased in at the end of the year. It's awaiting formal approval by Governor Cuomo's labor commissioner and would affect an estimated 200,000 workers. In a letter opposing the hike, a lawyer for the National Restaurant Association argues the increase unfairly applies to only national chain restaurants and infringes on the legislature's authority to pass minimum wage increases. New York City's tree census is underway, but with a high-tech twist. Instead of using paper and pencils, volunteers are using tablets and smartphones to count every street in the city. Parks worker Brian Hilton was out with volunteers yesterday and says the new method helps crews act fast if someone sees things like signs stapled to a tree or plastic bags stuck in branches.
We can have somebody like a city park worker, for instance, come out with a staple remover and remove those staples. We can have our forestry crew with the trucks with the ladders go and possibly, get those bags.
In the last census in 2005, volunteers counted close to 600,000 street trees. The city thinks there will be more now, despite heavy storm damage from Sandy. Once again, we have a heat advisory in effect. This is WNYC.
Support for NPR comes from AT&T. With AT&T, the network is on demand, the office is mobile, and the cloud is designed for high security. Learn more at att.com/focus.
You're listening to The Leonard Lopate Show on AM 820 and 93.9 WNYC.
For someone who claims to be an antisocial loner, Adam Resnick sure has collaborated with some pretty interesting people. He's an Emmy Award-winning writer who's worked on Late Night with David Letterman, The Larry Sanders Show, Get a Life, and Saturday Night Live. And now Plume has just published his collection of personal essays called Will Not Attend, Lively Stories of Detachment and Isolation, in a paperback edition. And I'm very pleased to welcome him back to our show. Hi.
Thanks for having me, Leonard. I'm honored to be here.
Are the stories in this book, for the most part, true?
Yeah, they're all true. I mean, there were some things where I might have approximated dialogue, especially when it comes to my father, who said so many things I could actually use and shift around the many things he said over the years that were so unintentionally hilarious and fit them where I needed them. But yeah, in a sense, it's about, they're like these things in my life that were epics, and it's to me, these stories, which I think everyone has, these epic moments in their childhood or this and that, and that's how I try to write it. But it was I really live inside my head even when I was a kid, so a lot of that gets very blown up, and that's how I wanted to portray it.
Your father is a major character in this book. Is it fair to describe him as larger than life?
He's absolutely larger than life, and was someone that I feared and loved equally. I felt that from him, but it was yeah, he's quite a character, quite an amazing human being.
Well, there are one of a number of boys. How many? 6 altogether?
6 altogether. It was a hell house.
Do you think that maybe your father needed to project a large personality just to keep you all in line?
I think he had that anyway. He didn't have to say much, like when he was out of the house, we'd raise hell and everything, but when he walked in, you could hear a pin drop. I mean, so that was, but I often, as I got older and, I got into my 20s and I really started to understand life a little more, I give him such credit for not going out for the proverbial loaf of bread, because I would have done that. These 6 crazy boys. I wasn't as crazy as the rest of them, but it was...
Where did you stand in the...
Fourth down. Yeah, and it was, and then 2 brothers younger than that are twins that were after me, but it was really it damaged my nervous system. I don't think it's ever been repaired, and plus I think it was wired in a way to be
because you were the 4th down. You weren't bonding with the older ones.
It wasn't about bonding, because there wasn't a lot of bonding in general, and I'm actually not the type of person who bonds in general.
As you suggested, even your book on it.
Yeah, right. No, I mean, I have friends. Don't get me wrong, but I'm not. The brothers. It was a crazy house, and I have this thing even when I was young. Girls, women, I like them better because they just seem in general kinder and more patient. Boys, I always found to be problematic. I don't know that testosterone sort of charged. It was the worst environment possible for someone born wired the way I was.
How did you go from barely graduating high school, flunking out of community college, failing as a life insurance salesman, to becoming an intern at the Letterman Show?
Well, I just want to correct you. I got through community college. I had to. I barely graduated, so I had to go to community college, Harrisburg Area Community College, which is a great place, which allowed me then to go to NYU Film School. I went to NYU Film School and immediately was like, this is a joke. This is not, I was very, very into movies, I thought I just didn't see a way. I didn't see how to make a step from film school to anything. And then...
but a lot of people have made that step.
Absolutely. I wasn't feeling it for me. I don't think it would have happened, And, I was so naive. I came from central Pennsylvania. I didn't know the word internship. It had never been, it was not a word that would have ever come up in our house or anything else. And it was all, this is where luck is so much about this business. It's the whole thing. You have to be able to deliver the goods. But I remember this kid at NYU telling me that he just got an internship reading scripts for some producer. And I said, like, what's an internship? And he explained it to me. And I remember walking out of the classroom. It was after the class. I'm thinking, I was so love the Letterman Show, so obsessed with Dave in those early NBC days. And I just cold called them and said, do you have any of these things? They're called internships, I think. And they said, well, as a matter of fact, we're in desperate need of a writer's intern now, immediately. Could you just come up and meet the head writer, Steve O'Donnell? And I went up there and I met with Steve, and that went very well. Went back for a couple other meetings, and I got it. That was my foot in the door. And if I had never made that call, I might be in Harrisburg right now trying to sell insurance still.
But I have been told by many people who worked in those kinds of internships that what they learned mostly was the coffee preferences for the writers.
That's often the case. I think now even more so. But then it was a small shop, and I was so, it was in the writing department, exactly what I wanted, not the talent department, not research. And so I was working directly with Steve O'Donnell, who was so generous to me and could see that I sort of knew the show, and I showed him some stuff that I wrote for the show, and he liked it. So Steve O'Donnell and Chris Elliott both really encouraged me, and Dave, I would give jokes to his assistant, and Dave, I remember one day calling me in, and just said, hey, this is good stuff, you should keep trying it. And that was seriously the biggest moment of my life. It was
that
huge.
Kind of encouragement.
Yeah, and I felt, hearing that from Dave, I thought it's only a matter of time. I think I can make this happen.
And you met Chris Elliott, as you said, while you work on that show. Did you know right away that you were connecting, that you could collaborate?
Yeah. Chris and I connected almost immediately, and I was such a fan of his before I saw the show, before I met him, but I didn't know what to expect, because he's, kind of psychotic, and those pieces he did with Dave. But Chris is a great guy, and we bonded over a lot of things. We loved the same movies, knew the same moments in those movies, but also we were not Ivy Leaguers. Chris didn't go to college at all. I was a dropout, and we weren't the other, a lot of Harvard guys. So I think we had some kind of connection that way, but it just worked. Our sense of humor matched so identically, and we just almost instantly just really enjoyed each other's company. It was just one of those things.
And when did you start thinking of co-creating and writing Get a Life, that fabulous show that people remember with a lot of fondness, often called an anti-sitcom.
Yeah, well, it was that. Well, the thing about that was Chris was offered, Fox offered Chris a deal to do a show, and he just knocked on my door at Letterman one day and just said, hey, they gave me this deal to write a show. I don't have any ideas. Do you want to write it with me? And I was like, yeah, sure. And I never thought anything would, happen. And then the next thing you know, they want to make the pilot. And then you think, well, it's never going to go to series. And then it goes to series. And I was scared. I didn't want to go because I was really, the thought of leaving, Rockefeller Center and being, just working for Dave, it was just such a great environment to go to LA, which is sort of everything that Dave warned us about Hollywood and things like that. And, he was right. So
he resisted going to LA when the other late night shows went there.
Yeah, well, I think if he had gotten the Tonight Show, which he should have, that was a total travesty and it was wrong. He should have absolutely got the Tonight Show. I think he would have possibly gone to LA then, but afterwards, no. So it was, but Get a Life was just, it was something that I didn't really enjoy doing it at the time because I didn't like living out there, and there was other things I didn't really like about it. And also, nobody seemed to enjoy that show when it was on. We didn't hear that till a year or so later, till people started, would say, hey, I really like that show. So,
well, Chris Elliott also had a father.
Yes.
Was that a bonding thing? The fact that both of your fathers were bigger than life?
Although his father's a much different person, but we both have the same. It's interesting. Chris and I are like, we're born 1 month apart. Our fathers were born like a couple months apart. It's a very strange thing. And so it was.
But your father's best friend wasn't Ray.
No, nothing like that. Yeah, right. He didn't have a partner.
You were writer and co-executive producer for a season of the Larry Sanders Show on HBO.
Yeah, the final season.
Did you draw upon your experiences at Letterman for that?
Sure. Yeah. No. Absolutely. I think they, Gary looked for writers that. Not everyone had that experience, but it was helpful. And obviously, if you can write for that show, I was thrilled to be there. That was such a, that's just absolutely one of the greatest, if not the greatest shows ever.
Well, I think that people in this business consider it the closest to the real thing. And even the craziness that occurs is the kind of craziness that we have all seen. Yeah. Maybe not as wild, but pretty much based on the sorts of stuff that occur in this business, in the talk show business.
Absolutely. I think, Gary definitely got that down, and that was important to him, that it be real.
So what happened to him? Letterman, first of all, were you surprised that Letterman decided to leave?
Yes and no. Dave's such a smart guy. If it was time for him to leave, he could sense it. He I'm sure did not want to stay 1 second longer than he thought was, going to be the right thing to do. So, but it was very sad for me and still kind of depressing that he's not there.
And what about Larry Shandling?
Gary Shandling.
I haven't seen him
recently. Larry. Yeah. I don't know.
But he was so much that character.
Yeah, I don't know what he's doing. I guess he doesn't. He doesn't really. I don't know. Maybe it's one of those things. If you do something really great, then how do you top yourself? I can't imagine Dave wanting. Who knows what Dave's going to do? But after making this iconic show, what do you do to top that? You can't. So
my guess is Adam Resnick, who's written a book called Will Not Attend, Lively Stories of Detachment and Isolation. Up until now, you have written for television and movies like Lucky Numbers, Death to Smoochie, Cabin Boy, which you also directed. For a detached guy, you've done a lot of stuff in collaboration. Was writing a book a chance finally to work alone?
It was actually the greatest creative experience I ever had. Look at some of those movies you mentioned. I was very frustrated as a writer that I would write scripts that I thought came out well and people seemed to really like. But then the movies would not come out well. So then when it's all over, you think, well, what did I do? Now my name is just on a lousy movie. What is the point of writing? And I kept, I'll talk myself out of anything. I knew I wanted to write a book eventually, and it was great because it was. Everything went to principle. There was no collaboration. There was no turning it into another medium. It was just writing. And if writing books paid enough money, to cover my overhead, that's all I would do. I enjoyed the book more than anything other than working for Letterman.
Oh, you've had still a prestigious career, but is it true that your Wikipedia page once featured a photograph of a different man named Adam Resnick?
Yeah, I've seen it on Wikipedia or Google. Yeah, I think it might still be up there even. Actually, when I did Dave's show, I had them put that up. Yeah, some guy who's like wearing, I know he looks like a director or something. He's got like a baseball cap on and wearing headphones. Definitely a much more confident man than I am, whoever it is. That's why I said, I hope they just keep it up. Let people think that's me.